Today is December 12th, 2020. My name is Charles Suter. I'll be presenting part 7 of my decision-making series titled The 80-20 Principle. My main message here is resolve the biggest problems first. Most people spend most of their time dealing with their smallest problems, probably because they have confidence and ability in resolving them. Plus, they derive a certain amount of satisfaction in accomplishing the successful resolution of small problems. However, people tend to ignore or avoid their biggest problems, even though they cause the most emotional distress. And this is probably due to the fact that the bigger problems seem, bigger, monumental, insurmountable, and intimidating. This presentation argues that most people are allocating their resources backwards. If you spent a larger portion of your resources, this is time and energy, to eliminate just a few of the more aggravating problems, this would eliminate the source of most of your emotional distress. Let me draw your attention to this diagram here. This is the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle, and I've translated this into emotional distress and problem resolution. 80% of your emotional distress comes from 80% of your problems. And in order to eliminate these problems, you will need to devote 80% of your resources. Now, most people have this backwards. They spend 80% of their time trying to eliminate 80% of their problems, the small problems. However, even if they eliminate these 80% of their problems, it's only going to eliminate 20% of their emotional distress. So let me continue here with proposition 1. Again, to repeat, 80% of your emotional distress comes from just 20% of your problems. You don't have to remove all of your problems to be free of emotional distress. Just expend 80% of your resources to get rid of your 20% most troubling problems. Those are the ones that are causing 80% of your emotional distress. This 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle, is based upon an observed phenomena which asserts that 80% of the outcomes result from just 20% of the causes. A good example of this is how wealth is distributed. 20% of the people own 80% of the wealth. This same principle can be applied to problem solving and the alleviation of emotional distress. The main message of this presentation is that to eliminate emotional distress, you must devote more resources, up to 80%, to eliminate your 20% biggest problems. Proposition 2. To repeat. I'm recommending that you spend a larger part of your resources, up to 80%, resolving your biggest 20% of your problems. But before you do that, you must be sure that these big problems are solvable with available resources. If you have a problem like this, then I refer you to Decision Making Part 6, titled Problem Finding. Devote more resources, up to 80%, on fewer but bigger problems. Your stress reduction will be proportional to the big problem elimination. Instead of spending 80% of your time on the smallest problems, probably because they are easier to solve, you should expend the same amount of resources on your biggest problems, which only accounts for 20% of them. Most people don't spend enough time in resolving their biggest problems because here comes the big gulp, they're big. Solving big problems takes more time and energy and aggravation than people want to spend. So in effect, by not devoting enough resources to tackle the bigger problems, they are choosing to suffer perpetual emotional distress. Proposition 3. You will only gain true peace of mind when your 20% biggest problems are resolved. So, That means you have 20% of your resources left over. What do you spend them on? The smaller problems, of which 80% are the number or proportion that are smaller. The fact is, you're always going to have smaller problems to deal with. Some of them will persist, and some of them will go away on their own. But if you adopt the habit of fixing the easy, small problems immediately, you won't have that many small problems to worry about. Most people are capable of eliminating their small problems. But until they eliminate the bigger problems, they will continue to suffer from significant emotional distress. Stands to reason that bigger problems cause bigger emotional distress. Even by spending only 20% of your time on the smaller or 80% of your problems, you can still eliminate the vast majority of them, because you know how to dispose of most of them quickly with known methods. Just fix them when you see them. My final message: you can reduce your stress by up to 80% by eliminating the top 20% of your problems. The Pareto or 80-20 principle has been applied to many proven physical and human phenomena, including the textbook case I'm presenting now, which is the psychological impact of problems on emotional distress. So if you seem to be suffering from perpetual emotional distress, it could be that you need to reallocate your resources of time and energy to the bigger problems. That's all for now. Remember to stay positive. You'll be happier, healthier, and live longer.